Hi, Laura. Thanks for coming back to visit again today. How have you been?
Oh, I've been all right.
Yeah. What has been happening over the past week?
Nothing really new, I don't think. Just kind of the same old, usual work stress and that type of stuff.
Right. So, how would you say you've been feeling since our last session? Have you noticed any improvements? Things get worse?
Um, I think I have different feelings about different things. Like, I feel better about like the whole I'm trying to wear a bunch of different hats at work type thing because like I'm no longer case managing the majority of the cases that I was case managing, so I have more time to devote to being a supervisor and supervisory duties. Then like we have the whole other aspect of the job, which is stressful, which is like the dynamic issues
Right.
between myself and the other supervisor at my office, and that's been a problem long enough that I'm pretty convinced that it's never going to change. So I'm still like pretty down about that, but the other aspect of it I feel better about, so that's good.
Okay. So, aside from that, had you noticed anything positive that you've been able to latch onto over the past week?
I would say like pretty similar things to last week when we had our session. Like I've been on a couple home visits with my new staff. We actually had to move kids to a couple of our kiddos to a different placement on Friday. So myself and the new worker that's taken over as case manager, we went and did that on Friday afternoon. And so we got to go pick the boys up, and we had a good conversation with them in the car, and we got them McDonald's and took them to their new placement and hung out with them for a little bit to make sure that they were okay. And then today I went with another one of my new staff to a home visit to meet one of the families that she was um, working with, and I got to, model some, I guess, case
Right.
management techniques with her. So those have been good things.
Good. Last week we kind of talked about how um, you're feeling like you've got to give 100%, and we kind of talked about how you didn't expect your supervisor to be available to you 24/7, and you were able to recognize that your staff is confident and competent and that they do a good job and you're confident in their abilities. And you had written on some note cards that you were going to um, put those things on there about your confidence in the staff and stuff, and that you were going to read those daily. Have you been keeping up with that?
Well, yeah, I think I definitely, regardless of like the actual written statements, like I have daily reminders, because I have two out of five staff that are experienced who've been at the agency at least a couple of years. One who's been there as long, if not longer, than I have, and so just like just seeing them every day is a reminder that they're obviously very confident and they are very capable of doing their job. I just I just always want to make sure that um, if they need me, I'm available. Not so much them, but more so like the new staff that have only been here for a couple months.
Right. And we kind of talked about how even with some of the new staff, you had, you feel that they're doing a good job and going from there. Did you notice that you felt different last week after our session than you had the weeks before that?
I think probably a little bit. Like I think it was a good reminder that I thought back about how I was a new staff, member at one time too, and how I had lots of questions, but how, you know, I still didn't need my supervisor 100% of the time. And um, if I did need something and she wasn't like physically present, like I knew how to get the information or find out how to get it. And those are the types of things that I've worked hard to like model to my new staff. So I feel confident that they know those things too. So that
Okay.
kind of made me feel better.
Do you think some of your homework, thinking about your seasoned staff, maybe you applied it a little bit to the newer staff as well?
Yeah, yeah, I think, because some of the things we talked about last week too is like I'm not the only person, that they can go to if they need help. Like the experienced staff are good resources for them, and they have been, even though they have been bogged down for the last 3 or 4 months doing the work of, you know, twice as many people as what we actually had, they still have taken the time and have had the patience to help new staff. If new staff have questions, they answer the questions, or if they need like a demonstration about how to do something, they've been very good and very patient about doing that with them. And so I'm appreciative of that, and I make sure that they know that.
Okay. So with all that, I'm going to say, what do you feel like would be important for you for us to discuss today? What would we like to put on our agenda?
I don't really know, honestly. I mean, I think that, you know, just continuing, because I'm still case managing a little bit. So I think, like, at some level, you know, those worries are still there, that, like, I don't, like, when I'm wearing, you know, 2 different hats, being a case manager and a supervisor, like, I still don't, like, for me personally, like, I don't get to devote as much time to being a supervisor as I want. And I don't, like, if I was just a case manager, I don't get to spend as much I don't get to devote as much time to being a case manager as what I would if I was a full-time case manager. So I think that's just the struggle, is like, for me personally, I don't get to like put 100% towards each specific role, because you can't when you're wearing 2 hats. You can't be 100% supervisor
Right.
and 100% case manager.
So what would your thoughts be about, rather than, because we've kind of been focusing on just the stress of work itself, and I kind of get the feeling that you've kind of settled into that now that you have new staff. Do you think that that in itself is taking up more of your time thinking, or do you feel like you're more concerned about giving 100% to something?
I think, I don't know, I guess I think I don't know what I think, because there are a lot of like pros and cons. Like, obviously my main worry is just I like to do things well. Like, if I'm a case manager, I want to be a good case manager and see all my families and get all my narrative done on time, exactly when it's supposed to be, and not be late with my court summaries, because that's the expectation. And like, you should be able to meet the expectations of your job. And when I'm a supervisor, I want to be able to have weekly staffings with my staff and read hotline reports when they need to be read, and get monthly summaries approved, you know, every month. And so I just haven't been able to do all those things over the last month. And while having new staff helps relieve some of that stress, because I can take a chunk of that, I can take the case management piece off my shoulders and place on their shoulders, and let
Right.
them kind of do some of that frontline case management work. But also, with new staff, you have, especially new staff who've not worked like in an agency similar before, or who don't have a whole lot of experience like in child welfare, they need a lot of support, and they need a lot of guidance and direction, and modeling and stuff like that. So that also takes, like, in the past, I've had really like experienced staff who have been pretty self-sufficient and pretty independent. And so that's kind of like a new experience for me as well, because that takes up like the supervisor time, the time that I do have to get to be a supervisor, like that takes up a lot of that time. It's like, you know, being there for them and making sure they understand what they need to do, and reinforcing for them, you know,
Okay. So
what that
I'm
looks like.
I'm hearing you kind of say 2 different things. Still, you're worried about the new staff and your ability to train them well, and you're also worried about your ability to give 100% to and doing the jobs that you're currently, the hats that you have, well.
Yeah.
Which do you think would be most concerning for you? And I say, if we put those 2 on the agenda, if that's okay with you, which do you think would be most beneficial for you to deal with or talk about today?
I don't know. I think they both probably like are equal as far as like the time I spend thinking about them. But I also think too, like, hopefully that like being able to devote 100% because I'm like in the last week of my first practicum. So that's going to be over with like come Friday. And I'm only case managing one case now compared to the 10 that I was last month and the month before. So I think like that part is kind of resolving itself as far as like as each week passes, I'm getting to get back more into my supervisor role. And so I just think probably making sure that I'm being as supportive as I need to be for my new staff and like having the patience to kind of deal with staff who are not necessarily needy, but more needy than what I'm used to having. Like making sure that I do that right and devote the time to them that they need me to devote to.
Okay. So I'm going to say it sounds like maybe looking at the time that you devote to your new staff and how to balance that is what I'm hearing you say. Is that sound correct?
Yeah, I think so. I just like we're still very busy and I just am a person probably like most people who just kind of like are set in their ways, and when I start something at work I like to get it finished, and so I find myself getting like annoyed sometimes, like because I might be like reading a hotline and one of the new staff will come in like and want to tell me about like the home visit they had last night and how it went, which is great. I love to hear about it, but I also like to hear about it like during scheduled staffing times. Like if it's not an emergency, like I wanna read my hotline and get my hotline finished, and then like we can have this discussion. And so like I have to catch myself like if I become aggravated or annoyed and think, hold up, like you're not being fair. Like this is part of your responsibility too. So like trying to balance that.
So, what do you think, what does it mean to you when you talk about giving 100%?
Just like I don't like to be like, for example, say, my supervisor responsibilities as the CAN supervisor and the FCS supervisor is to read and approve hotlines and keep track of when hotlines are due and make sure they're turned in when they're supposed to be and get those approved timely and get those back to staff so they can sign off on them, and to have weekly staffings with all of my staff about the cases that they're carrying and any concerns that they have, and to be available for my staff if they need something. I have staff that are on call on the weekends. Like an expectation of being on call is to communicate with your supervisor if you have to go out on reports. And so I don't, like if I can't be available to approve a hotline because I'm out all day at home visits because I'm case managing cases, then that bothers me. Like if I have to ask my circuit manager to read and approve a couple of the hotlines for me that I can usually do on my own because I have to spend all of this time doing case management duties, then that bothers me because reading and approving those reports is my responsibility. Even though she's wonderful and she always says yes and she says it's not a problem and she normally reads more than what I ask her to read, it still bothers me because it's my responsibility and I don't like my responsibilities being handled by somebody else. Like I don't.
Okay. So what I got from you out of that was giving 100% to you means meeting your deadlines.
Yes.
And fulfilling your responsibilities as a supervisor.
Yes.
And anything else we could add to that?
I think those are the big ones. Like just meeting the expectations, of my job.
Okay. What happens, like you gave the example of your supervisor reading some hotlines and approving them because you're wearing different hats. What does it mean, or what happens if your supervisor were to read a couple of the hotlines and approve them?
Nothing major. And like I said, she's always very supportive. And if I say, hey, would you mind doing this for me? There's never been a time where she said, nope, sorry. She's always like, absolutely. And, I may come back to work and find that she read 4 instead of the 2 that I asked her to read. So it's not there. I wouldn't say there's any like negative consequence, like as far as like her reaction it's just like I feel bad because I think she has her own job duties. Like she shouldn't be doing mine because I can't get them accomplished because I'm doing all this other stuff.
Okay. So how is her helping you with your job different than you helping the caseworkers with their jobs since they're short-staffed?
It's not, and I knew that that's what you were going to say. Like, it's not different at all. Like, I offer, to help them because I try to, one of my biggest things about being a supervisor too is not ever losing touch with what it means to be a frontline staff, like always remembering what that was like and what the struggles were. And so like always trying to find ways that I can make things less stressful for them. And like it doesn't bother me one bit to do that for them. And so I doubt it probably bothers my supervisor one bit to be that kind of supportive for me.
Do you
but
think
it still
it's
doesn't keep me from feeling bad.
Do you think it's possible that when your staff sees you being so stressed out having to ask for help, that it makes them stressed out asking you for help?
Well, and that's the thing too. I think my stress is much more of an internal stress because I'm pretty much of like a feeling suppressor. Like I don't have like full-fledged meltdowns or temper tantrums in the office for anybody else to see. It's much more of like an internal, or if I say something, it will be to my boss, like, oh, I hate to ask you, I know this is not your responsibility, it's mine. So I don't necessarily have those or express those feelings to them. So I don't know. I guess I don't know if they pick up on that or not.
Well, have you ever noticed that they seem stressed having to ask you for help?
I don't know. I think I have like different staff perceive asking for help in different ways. Like I think I have one that's probably pretty similar to me in that she's like, oh, getting hotlines done, that's my responsibility. I don't like want anybody doing my job for me. And then I have some that are more like open to asking for help. So
okay. So your staff member that's like you, have you ever had to help her with things before?
every once in a while, yes.
Okay. And is that a big deal? I'm going to say, is she apologetic? How does that usually play out?
It's not usually a big deal. She's just, kind of like I am, like, oh, thanks for helping, and we kind of move on. So, I mean,
Okay.
it's never really too big of a deal.
So what can we do? What things do you think could be put into place to help you alleviate some of the stress that you're putting on yourself when you have to ask for help?
I think probably just reminding myself of like, hey, I do this for my staff. It doesn't bother me to not like, in fact, I enjoy like part of my job that I like the most is like being able to help them. One of my main concerns is being able to be helpful and to be able to be supportive. Like I told them the other day, like I don't ever want to do anything that makes your job harder for you, that makes things more stressful for you. So if there's a way that I can help you that I'm not helping you now, like please let me know because I want to be able to do that for them.
Okay.
I think just reminding myself that's a part of being a supervisor and it's okay because we all have legitimate reasons right now for being perhaps behind, considering how short-staffed we've been. If we've just been trying to survive. So.
Okay. So what could we do this next coming week to help you remind yourself of that? Because really, we've talked about a lot of things today, and the main thing that we've kind of focused on is kind of what it means to you giving 100%, that means meeting your deadlines, fulfilling your responsibilities, and doing it without asking help from others, basically, is what I heard you saying. Is that sound right?
Yeah, I think I could probably just make it a point to remind myself, like if I start to feel anxious or guilty about and I don't necessarily have to ask for help that often, but every once in a while, especially like if I'm scheduled to be off a day during the week, like I may not get to all the hotlines that I want to get to approve that week. I think it's just reminding myself, like if I start to feel guilty about, asking for help, like just remind myself, like that's actually a part of my job. Like getting to help my staff is actually a part of my job that I enjoy. And so my supervisor probably feels similar, maybe, I guess. I guess that's an assumption that I'm making, but.
What about maybe doing a little experiment with, working on asking for help and kind of easing those feelings of stress? What could you maybe do in your job that would challenge that just a little bit?
I don't know. I mean, I had, my supervisor has some of like the low priority responsibilities that I have that have kind of gone neglected over the last couple of months, like monthly summaries, workers have to do monthly summaries every month, but there's no like time frame or like performance consequence for not approving them. It's not like a hotline, whereas like it has to be completed and approved within a certain time frame. Like you can just kind of approve those as you go. And so I have several monthly summaries that need approved, and she's offered like several times, hey, I can help with this. And I'm always like, oh, no, I'll get to it. Just because I think, oh, it's my responsibility. So maybe like the next time she asks, I could try hard to say, yeah, or here you can approve 10 of them and I'll do the rest, or I don't know. So
Okay.
you do this case and I'll do this case, I don't know.
I think that sounds like a wonderful idea. And to say you've got something that you have plenty of that you could ask for her to help you with.
Yeah.
Do you think that'd be something you'd be able to do?
I think I could probably manage it.
Okay. Anything else that you can think of that maybe we need to talk about today?
I don't think so.
You think the homework seems doable?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to say, how about the session overall? Anything we need to change or can improve upon?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. Would you be available to meet at the same time again next week?
Yep.
Okay. I look forward to hearing about how it went asking your supervisor for help. And I want you, when you do that, to make note of kind of the feelings that go through your head right then. If it's anxious, stress, guilt, and
Yep.
maybe we'll see what we can do to help you deal with that.
Okay, I can do that.
All right. We'll see you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.